My coworker stood at the front of the conference room with a confident smile on his face, clicking through slides that looked painfully familiar. Charts I had designed, flow diagrams I had created, explanations I had written. Almost word for word. People around the table nodded along as if they were witnessing something impressive. A few even murmured approval when he highlighted how much time the new system would save the company. Our manager leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, clearly satisfied. She talked about initiative, ownership, and leadership. She praised him for taking charge and seeing the project through. I sat there quietly, my coffee cooling in my hand, watching the moment stretch on longer than it should have. Not because I was angry, not because I felt blindsided, but because I already knew how this story would end. While everyone else focused on his confidence and presentation skills, my mind was on something far less exciting, but far more powerful. An email chain, a long one. One that started months earlier, with detailed explanations, clear timestamps, and replies that could not be argued away. The same emails he casually replied to without a second thought were quietly waiting to undo everything he was enjoying in that moment. He didn't know that yet. So I stayed silent and let him enjoy the applause. I worked in a corporate office that loved to talk about teamwork. Collaboration was encouraged in every meeting. Transparency was written into company values. Leadership constantly reminded us that great ideas could come from anywhere. In practice, though, recognition followed a different pattern. The loudest voices were noticed first. The most confident speakers were assumed to be the contributors. And the people who quietly built systems behind the scenes were mostly invisible unless something broke. I had learned that lesson early in my career. I wasn't new to the company, but I wasn't someone who dominated meetings either. I didn't speak just to be heard. I didn't interrupt others or rush to take credit. I focused on doing solid work, documenting everything, and delivering consistently. That reputation is exactly why I was assigned a major internal project. The task was to redesign an outdated reporting system that several departments relied on every single day. It was slow, error-prone, and heavily manual. People complained about it constantly, but no one wanted to touch it because it was complex and deeply embedded in existing workflows. Leadership finally decided it needed to be fixed properly. I was given full ownership, planning, design, execution, delivery. My coworker, Brian, was assigned as a supporting contributor. His role was clearly defined from the beginning. He was supposed to review drafts, provide feedback, and help test the final version. He wasn't responsible for building anything from scratch. Still, I made a point to keep him involved. I sent detailed emails outlining the project goals. I explained my design decisions carefully, including why certain approaches were chosen over others. I documented progress step by step so there would never be confusion later about how things came together. Those emails were not rushed. They were structured, thoughtful, and easy to follow. Brian replied occasionally. Looks good, makes sense, agree with this approach. Nothing alarming, nothing suspicious. At the time, I saw it as normal collaboration. About 2 weeks before the deadline, our manager announced that leadership wanted a preview presentation. They didn't want deep technical detail yet. They just wanted a high-level overview of the solution and its impact. I assumed I would present. After all, I built the system and understood every decision behind it. Instead, Brian volunteered. He emailed our manager directly, copying me, and offered to walk leadership through the project. The wording was polite, confident, casual. I didn't object. I assumed I'd be included in the meeting or at least consulted beforehand. I wasn't. The meeting happened without me. I found out later that afternoon when my manager stopped by my desk and congratulated Brian on his initiative and his strong ownership of the solution. She talked about how impressed leadership had been with his clarity and confidence. That was the moment everything clicked. Brian hadn't just explained the project. He had presented it as if it were his. He spoke confidently, used my work, and never once clarified who had actually designed and built the system. And because no one questioned him, the credit stuck. People around the office started associating the project with his name. Conversations shifted. Recognition followed him. People expected me to react, to confront him, to send an angry email or correct the narrative immediately. I didn't. I smiled politely and said nothing. Here's what Brian didn't realize. I never delete emails. Every requirement breakdown, every design explanation, every progress update. Every decision rationale was still sitting in my inbox, time-stamped and organized. And more importantly, Brian had replied to many of them. Those replies mattered. They proved he received my work. They proved he acknowledged it. They proved he didn't create it. I didn't do anything dramatic. I didn't forward emails to management. I didn't complain to HR. I didn't even hint that something was wrong. Instead, I quietly prepared. I created a folder and sorted every relevant email chronologically. I highlighted the first message where I outlined the project concept. I marked the follow-ups where I explained technical decisions in detail. I saved Brian's short acknowledgments right next to them. As I reviewed everything, I noticed something else. Brian never asked deep questions. He never challenged design choices. He never proposed alternatives. His involvement stopped at surface-level approval. That told me something important. He didn't fully understand the system. And people who take credit without understanding eventually expose themselves. So I waited. Leadership asked for an enhancement to the project. This wasn't a small tweak. It required a deeper understanding of how the system worked and why certain decisions had been made. Brian volunteered again. This time, things didn't go smoothly. In meetings, his explanations became vague. He leaned heavily on slides. When asked technical questions, he deflected or said he would follow up later. Behind the scenes, he started forwarding my emails. He copied sections of my explanations and sent them to leadership, presenting them as his own clarifications. He didn't realize that the original messages clearly showed my name, timestamps, and context. Eventually, leadership noticed inconsistencies. What Brian said verbally didn't always align with what was written. His confidence began to crack. The narrative didn't hold together anymore. Then our manager asked a simple question in an email thread. Can you clarify how this component was originally designed? Brian panicked. Instead of answering directly, he forwarded one of my old emails without removing the original header. Within minutes, my manager emailed me privately. Did you design this? I replied calmly. Yes, I sent that weeks ago. Then I attached the full email chain. No accusations, no commentary, just facts. Leadership didn't react immediately. They reviewed everything carefully. They followed the timeline from the very first message. They saw how the project started, how decisions were made, and how ownership quietly shifted without acknowledgement. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Brian was called into meetings. Then more meetings. Clarifications were requested. His answers didn't hold up under scrutiny. A week later, during a department update, leadership announced role adjustments. Brian was reassigned to a junior position. The project ownership was formally recognized as mine. Future presentations were reassigned accordingly. There was no public confrontation. No dramatic fallout, just quiet consequences. After the meeting, Brian avoided eye contact. He didn't apologize. He didn't confront me. He just looked confused, like someone who still didn't understand how things had unraveled so completely. Because from his perspective, everything had simply fallen apart. Brian still believes his demotion happened because of miscommunication. He doesn't realize that the emails he casually replied to were the foundation of the case against him. I never raised my voice. I never accused him. I never demanded credit. I stayed quiet. I documented everything, and I let the truth surface on its own. Sometimes the strongest response isn't confrontation. It's patience, it's preparation. It's knowing that the truth doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. If someone ever takes credit for your work, remember this: you don't need to fight them. You don't need to panic. You don't need to expose them immediately. You just need receipts. What would you have done?